Bang! The metal door slammed shut, and my coffee cup shattered on the floor. It was 10 p.m. The hallway of our Yoido headquarters was empty, and under the harsh fluorescent light, his voice echoed clearly.
Handle it as we agreed.
At that moment, when my future son-in-law handed an envelope to a contractor, my fingers froze. I pulled my cleaning cap lower, but inside, my blood was boiling. I endured, I burned with anger, and I decided it was time to reveal everything. Why did a Chable chairwoman disguise herself as a janitor? And what was my son-in-law secretly plotting? Let me tell you everything now. You're listening to Silver Story Tree, where the voices of life's late chapters gently bloom again. Subscribe, like, and turn on the bell to hear more heartfelt stories that grow with time. The security scanner beeped sharply as I pressed my thumb against it. The night entrance door slid open with a hiss, and my mop glided across the polished floor with a soft swish. My 75-year-old hands gripped the wooden handle firmly, the calluses I'd deliberately cultivated over the past month pressing against the worn surface. I was no longer Han De-Yeon, the chairwoman of Han Industries. Tonight, I was just another invisible cleaning lady. The fluorescent lights hummed to life overhead, casting my masked face in a ghostly reflection against the windows of the 17th floor. It was nearly 10 p.m. in Yoido, the financial heart of Seoul, where buildings stood like sentinels guarding their secrets. The office held different truths after dark. This was what I needed to witness with my own eyes. The hushed voices came from around the corner, one of them unmistakably belonging to my granddaughter's fiancé, Choi De-yoon. I slowed my movements, the mop creating a rhythmic sound against the tile. The other voice belonged to Yang Min-soo, the head of one of our smaller supply companies. I couldn't make out every word, but fragments floated toward me. "We can push through this supply line for you," Do-yoon whispered, his tone casual yet calculated. There was a telltale rustle, the sound of paper against paper, and I glimpsed a white envelope disappearing beneath the conference table. Money changing hands without records, without witnesses. I glimpsed the corner of another white envelope. Larger this time, thicker. The rustling sound it made as it exchanged. Hands cut through the quiet office like a knife. Sometimes the smallest sounds reveal the greatest betrayals. I adjusted my mask and continued mopping, a plan already forming in my mind. The smell of fish cakes wafted from the small food stalls near Saitgang Station. Workers ending their night shifts huddled around steaming cups of instant ramen, finding momentary comfort before heading home. I pushed my cleaning cart past them, feeling the cool evening air against my face before re-entering our company building. The janitor's closet smelled of rubber gloves, spray bottles, and disinfectant, the honest sense of labor rarely encountered in my usual world. The cleaning staff room was small but warm with humanity. Discarded uniforms hung from hooks along one wall, their blue fabric faded from countless washes. I watched as Park Gui-rai carefully folded her appointment slip from Yoido Street, Mary's hospital, and tucked it into her uniform pocket. Her movements were precise, practiced. The economy of motion that comes from years of physical work. "Madam Chairwoman," she whispered, checking to ensure we were alone. "This supposed son-in-law of your granddaughter, is he trustworthy?" Her eyes held the careful concern of someone who had seen generations of wealth destroy families. Instead of answering, I slowly scrubbed at a stubborn stain on the floor, feeling the resistance against my cloth. Trust was something earned through actions, not promises or impressive resumes. Do-yoon had graduated from a prestigious university, managed successful teams, said all the right things at family dinners. But what did we truly know about the man beneath the polished surface? After most employees had gone home, Do-yoon remained, moving from office to office, his fingers flying across keyboards as though searching for something. I maintained my distance, pretending to empty trash bins, catching glimpses of his screen as I moved past. A document titled, Prenuptial Asset Division Draft, flashed briefly before he switched to another window. My heart constricted. Gia had mentioned nothing about prenuptial agreements in our conversations. She believed in the purity of their love, a belief I had once cherished myself before decades in business taught me that love and contracts occupied separate realms. A notification popped up on his phone, which he'd left momentarily on a desk. A message to GA, let's put the lease in my name. We can discuss registration later. The casual tone masked the legal implications. He was creating a paper trail that favored his ownership, regardless of who provided the funds. Love may be built on compromise, but property is built on promises kept and boundaries respected. That distinction had protected our family through 3 generations. Would GA understand this before it was too late? The elevator chimed softly, ding, breaking my contemplation. Do-yoon hurriedly gathered his things, shoving a thick envelope into the recycling bin, rather than the secure document disposal we maintained for confidential materials. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing fainter until the office fell silent again. I remained motionless by my cleaning cart, listening to the building settle around me. The water in my bucket had grown cold, small ripples, appearing on its surface with each distant sound. Nighttime transformed the office into something almost alive, creaking pipes, humming servers. The occasional distant door. In this liminal space between my 2 worlds, I found clarity. Tomorrow would bring difficult decisions. The evidence was mounting, but so was the pain that would come with revealing it. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking seconds that could never be reclaimed. Time moved differently at night, stretching moments into contemplative hours. I pushed my cart toward the recycling bin, my mind made up. The building seemed to hold its breath around me. I moved. No hesitation remained. The recycling bin yielded its secret easily. The white envelope felt empty, but had unexpected weight. Inside I found a receipt dated today. 5 million won in cash, and a memo detailing supply contract specifications with prices inflated well beyond market rates. The paper trembled slightly in my hands, not from age but from anger carefully contained. From the pocket of my apron, I withdrew a pen-shaped recording device. My grandson had given it to me last Christmas, joking that a chairwoman should always protect herself from misquoted meetings. Little did he know how I would use it. The small red light blinked once as I pressed the button. Recording started. I photographed the blind spot sign near the freight elevator with my phone. Digital evidence would complement physical proof. Business had taught me to leave nothing to chance, especially when dealing with someone as calculating as Do-yoon appeared to be. From around the corner came fragments of Do-yoon's phone conversation with Yang Min-soo, their voices carried in the empty office, bouncing off glass walls and marble floors. If we can just get approval before the holiday. The rest faded as they moved toward the exit, but the implication was clear. They were rushing something through before traditional family gatherings would bring increased scrutiny. As Do-yoon prepared to leave, I glimpsed the Prenuptial Asset Division Agreement draft in his hand. The official-looking document contained clauses that would effectively transfer company shares from Gia to him upon marriage. My granddaughter had inherited 10% of Han Industries on her 30th birthday, a significant holding that had apparently caught her fiancé's attention. I carefully noted the document title, date, and file path in my small notebook. Each detail would matter in the days to come. The file path might reveal who else had accessed the document. The blind spot by the freight elevator would show who had passed through unrecorded. My recording pen would capture conversations meant to remain private. While everyone saw an old woman cleaning floors, I was building a case methodically, piece by piece. The first batch of evidence would go to the internal audit team through anonymous email. They would handle initial verification while maintaining confidentiality. Companies survived on processes, not personalities, a principle I had established decades ago. The snap decision to investigate Do-yoon hadn't been made lightly. GA's happiness meant everything to me. But true happiness couldn't be built on deception. Better the pain of truth now than the devastation of betrayal after marriage. I was so absorbed in my thoughts that I didn't hear the footsteps behind me. Until a hand firmly tapped my shoulder. Do-yoon stood there, his expression unreadable in the dim emergency lighting. "Cleaning lady, are you hiding something in that garbage bag?" His voice carried an edge that hadn't been there earlier. Our eyes met briefly, his narrowed with suspicion. Mine hopefully hidden behind the mask of subservience I'd adopted along with my cleaning uniform. The moment stretched between us, taut with unspoken accusations. Had he seen me retrieve the envelope? The building held its breath around us, waiting for my response. The next morning, I visited Gongduk-dong Community Center to verify my granddaughter's marital status records. The system showed no registered marriage plans, yet we still had time. Morning sunlight streamed through the center's windows, catching dust particles that danced in the air like my swirling thoughts. The clerk barely glanced at me. Another elderly woman handling routine paperwork. Back in my apartment, I checked my secure email. The audit team director had acknowledged receipt of my anonymous report and requested additional evidence. They'd begun preliminary verification, but needed corroborating testimony to proceed further. Corporate governance structures were working exactly as I'd designed them to. Methodical, dispassionate, thorough. Park Gui-rai called my personal line, her voice carrying the weight of someone making a difficult decision. I've seen envelopes exchanged near the freight elevator before, many times. If you need someone to confirm this, I can speak up. The offer came with risks to her employment, her stability. Yet she made it anyway. Sometimes courage appears in the most unexpected places. The legal team suggested comparing original supplier contracts with amended versions. The discrepancies would reveal pattern and intent, rather than isolated incidents. Smart approach. They didn't know who was behind the investigation. Yet they were proceeding with appropriate caution and thoroughness. Using my authority as chairwoman, I scheduled a confidential board briefing without revealing my undercover activities. The meeting would provide the formal framework necessary for what would come next. Corporate action required process, documentation, multiple witnesses. Personal confrontation might satisfy emotion, but institutional response would ensure lasting consequences. The audit team successfully retrieved access logs for the prenuptial asset division agreement draft from our backup servers. Do-yoon had accessed the document 17 times in the past month, each time outside normal business hours. The pattern suggested deliberate secrecy, awareness that his actions crossed ethical lines. My phone buzzed with a notification, a message from Do-yoon to GA intercepted by our family security protocols, this afternoon. Sign the property transfer authorization form first. He was accelerating his timeline, perhaps sensing scrutiny. The urgency confirmed my suspicions that his intentions extended beyond mere love. On bus number 261 heading back to Yeouido, I watched my reflection in the window. The surgical mask hiding most of my features. Age had its advantages. People rarely looked closely at elderly women. We became background characters in their stories, invisible. Despite our presence, this invisibility had become my greatest asset. The test was finished. What remained was education, not just for Do-yoon, but for GA, for our employees, for our company culture. Sometimes lessons must be painful to be remembered. The bus swayed as it turned a corner. Passengers shifting unconsciously to maintain balance. Adaptation came naturally when the ground moved beneath you. The legal team whispered updates as I entered the building through the executive entrance. Resuming my proper identity after nights as a cleaning lady. Before the holiday, there's an all-employee town hall, with open question time scheduled. The perfect forum for what needed to happen next. Public accountability would ensure the message resonated throughout the company. The path forward was clear now, illuminated by evidence and purpose. The gentle weight of responsibility settled across my shoulders, familiar, almost comforting after decades of leadership. The third-floor town hall room hummed with conversation as employees filed in, settling into rows of chairs facing the presentation stage. Microphone feedback briefly pierced the air, causing several people to wince. The atmosphere carried a current of anticipation. Town halls rarely occurred without significant announcements. The moderator adjusted her glasses before speaking. Today we'll address an anonymous report regarding our transparency principles. Her voice echoed slightly in the large space. Employees exchanged curious glances, wondering which department was under scrutiny this time. I sat in the back row, no longer wearing a cleaner's uniform. When the moderator nodded in my direction, I stood and walked slowly toward the stage. The room fell silent, breaths held collectively as recognition dawned across faces. "I am Han De-Yeon," I stated simply into the microphone. No title needed, everyone knew exactly who I was. The screen behind me illuminated with evidence, photographs of receipts, cash exchanges, and CCTV blind spot markers. A partial transcript of recorded conversations appeared, names highlighted in bold. The documentation was clinical, factual, incontrovertible. I watched Do-Yoon's expression shift from confusion to shock to something approaching panic. "This is a misunderstanding," he blurted, rising from his seat near the front. "I have circumstances that," his voice cracked slightly, hands gesturing as though grasping for words that wouldn't come. I interrupted gently but firmly. "Circumstances may explain actions, but they don't eliminate responsibility for them." My voice remained steady, measured, not the angry accusation he likely expected, but something perhaps more difficult to face: disappointment backed by evidence. The audit team director took the microphone next, outlining their findings. "We've confirmed attempts to pressure a family member into a prenuptial agreement favoring asset transfer, documented kickbacks from suppliers, and established a pattern of workplace intimidation." Each point was presented with supporting evidence, timeline, and witness statements. Park Gui-rai stepped forward from the side of the room. In her cleaning uniform, she appeared small against the corporate backdrop. Yet her dignity filled the space. "We are people," she said simply. "Before we are employees, before we are positions, or titles or functions, we are people." The room fell silent, absorbing the profound simplicity of her statement. From the third row, Gia stood, her face pale but composed. I hadn't told her about the investigation, wanting to protect her from both potential disappointment and the possibility that I was wrong. The tremor in her voice revealed both pain and emerging strength. "If it had been sincere, you wouldn't have needed the agreement, would you?" she addressed Do-Yoon directly, her question hanging in the air between them. The personal becoming public, uncomfortable but necessary for healing to begin. Do-Yoon fell to his knees in the center aisle. A gesture that appeared rehearsed rather than genuine. "Just one more chance. If we could just get married." His plea was interrupted by the sound of the back door opening with a decisive click. The room turned collectively to see who had entered. The moment expanded, heavy with anticipation. Sometimes truth arrives from unexpected directions, carrying complications we cannot foresee. The woman who entered leaned heavily on a walking cane, her frame slight beneath a beige cardigan. Do-Yoon's mother. Her presence was unexpected. She hadn't been mentioned in any of our investigations. She moved slowly toward the center of the room, each step deliberate, effortful. "My son has been bearing this alone," she said, her voice barely carrying through the room. "I require dialysis 3 times weekly. He's been trying to support us both." The words emerged between labored breaths, revealing both physical frailty and maternal determination. A profound silence settled over the gathering. Complicated emotions crossed faces around the room, compassion mixing with uncertainty about how this new information should be weighed against what had been revealed. I moved toward the elderly woman, pulling a chair forward for her to sit. Her gratitude was evident as she lowered herself carefully, the strain of standing evident in her posture. Illness was never a person's fault. That much was clear and deserved recognition. "Illness is not a crime," I acknowledged, my voice gentle but unwavering. "But taking kickbacks is. Manipulating my granddaughter for financial gain is. These remain separate matters." Do-Yoon's composure crumbled entirely, tears tracking down his face unchecked. The debt collectors were relentless. The startup failed. The medical bills kept coming. I needed. Gia seemed like the answer. His honesty came too late, emerging only after exposure rather than through trust. Within me, 2 emotions ran parallel: sympathy for his difficult situation, and anger at the choices he'd made in response to it. Compassion and accountability occupied different circuits in the human heart. One needn't eliminate the other. I handed a glass of water to his mother. noting how her hands trembled slightly as she accepted it. Age and illness had taken their toll. Yet dignity remained in her straight posture, her direct gaze. She hadn't known about her son's actions that much was evident in her eyes. "We will help with your treatment," I said quietly. "That's a separate matter from what must happen here today. Boundaries must be maintained, even as we extend help where it's needed." Throughout the room, employees exchanged glances, relief mingling with solemn acknowledgement. The resolution would be neither purely punitive nor falsely merciful. True justice required holding both complexity and clarity simultaneously. I nodded to the legal director, signaling that we should proceed according to established protocols. Personal feelings, both sympathy and disappointment, must yield to proper procedure. The company hadn't endured for 3 generations by allowing emotions to override systems designed to protect its integrity. The path forward would be difficult for all involved. Healing rarely comes without pain. Yet facing truth, however uncomfortable, remained the only way toward genuine resolution. The morning light slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the town hall floor. A visual reminder of how circumstances cast shadows across our choices, without determining them entirely. The supply chain contracts involving Yongmin Sus Company underwent immediate comprehensive review. By afternoon, termination notices had been prepared for any agreements showing evidence of collusion or improper pricing. The legal team worked methodically, separating legitimate business from corrupted arrangements. Justice required precision, not broad strokes that might harm innocent parties. Regarding Du Yun, the security department collected his access credentials, while the Human Resources Committee prepared formal notifications. The investigation would continue through proper channels. Potential criminal and civil actions would be evaluated separately from corporate response. My personal feelings toward him had no place in these proceedings. The evidence alone would determine outcomes. GA and I visited the community center together to formally withdraw the marriage registration application. The clerk processed our paperwork without comment, though his eyes registered recognition as he glanced between our faces and the family name on the forms. Some wounds heal better away from public scrutiny, in the quiet spaces between necessary official acts. The company revised its whistleblower protection policies, strengthening anonymity guarantees and expanding reporting channels. Additional CCTV cameras were installed to eliminate the blind spot near the freight elevator, a small but significant improvement in our security infrastructure. Sometimes the most dangerous vulnerabilities are the ones we've grown accustomed to overlooking. The audit team completed their final report, confirming document manipulation based on server logs and file path records. Digital footprints revealed a pattern of late-night access and unauthorized modifications to company templates. Technology often captures truths invisible to the human eye alone. Original recordings and receipts were sealed and stored in preparation for potential regulatory inquiries. The Commercial Fair Trade Commission might have questions once supplier contract terminations became public. Transparency with authorities would demonstrate our commitment to addressing the issues thoroughly, rather than merely managing appearances. For Park Gui-rai and her cleaning staff, improvements came in the form of enhanced safety equipment, increased compensation, and adjusted shift schedules to better align with public transportation. Bus routes 261 and 7613 would now have stops directly at our employee entrance. Recognition of their contribution went beyond words to tangible changes in working conditions. Supplier bidding processes transitioned to open competition models, with results to be published on the company intranet for all employees to review. Transparency served as both preventive measure and cultural reinforcement. What remains hidden often festers. What faces light must either withstand scrutiny or transform. The Foundation's medical assistance program reviewed Du Yun's mother's treatment needs according to established guidelines. Her dialysis would continue uninterrupted at Yeouido Street. Mary's hospital, supported through proper channels, rather than through her son's improper actions. Compassion operated through systems, not exceptions. As evening approached, GA and I sat together in my apartment. The skyline of Seoul visible through the window. The city lights blinked on one by one as darkness gathered. A constellation of human activity spread before us. "Grandmother," Ga asked finally, her voice small but steady. "What about love? Is there still a place for it?" The question hung between us, both philosophical and deeply personal. I gazed out at the city, considering how to answer. Love existed alongside prudence, not in opposition to it. The heart and mind were meant to work in harmony, not conflict. How to convey this wisdom without diminishing the pain of her broken engagement? The distant sound of evening traffic rose from the streets below, a reminder of life continuing its forward motion regardless of individual setbacks. I turned to her, seeing both the child she had been and the woman she was becoming. A gentle breeze rustled through the metasequoia trees in Yeouido Park. Autumn had painted their needles in shades of gold and russet, creating a tapestry that shifted with each breath of wind. I paused on my morning walk, listening to the soft symphony of leaves against leaves. In the first-floor cafe of our company building, the espresso machine hissed as milk transformed into velvety foam. The sound reminded me of distant ocean waves, rhythmic and somehow reassuring. Small ripples formed on the surface of my latte, concentric circles expanding outward. Like the consequences of our actions. Park Gui-rai slid into the chair opposite mine, pushing half a red bean donut across the table. "Madam Chairwoman, you should smile more today," she said, her own face creasing with warmth. In the weeks since the town hall, our relationship had evolved into something approaching friendship, an unexpected gift from difficult circumstances. Across the cafe, Ga sat with her pastry school notebooks spread around her. Her pencil moved confidently across the page, sketching logo designs for the bakery she planned to open next spring. The hurt remained visible in quiet moments, but purpose had begun to heal what sympathy alone could not. I had chosen a desk by the window, rather than returning to the isolation of the executive floor. Leadership happened in the spaces between people, not from behind closed doors. The morning light fell across my hands as I reviewed quarterly reports, the skin marked by 75 years of living. Thin in places but stronger than it appeared. On the company intranet, the new transparency bulletin board displayed a small, Integrity Week badge that blinked occasionally to attract attention. Employees had embraced the changes with surprising enthusiasm, perhaps relieved to see values demonstrated rather than merely proclaimed. At 3 o'clock, a passenger boat glided slowly down the Han River, its wake creating gentle patterns on the water's surface. I watched its progress, reminded that movement forward doesn't require rushing. Some journeys benefit from deliberate pace, from taking time to observe the landscape as it passes. Authority could be removed like a coat, but dignity remained regardless of title or position. This truth had guided me through decades of business challenges, family responsibilities, and personal losses. What mattered wasn't power but how one wielded it, not achievement, but what one built with it. The sound of wind brushing against the window gently urged me forward, a whispered reminder that life continues beyond difficult chapters. "Now I want to try living as myself," Gia said softly from across the room, closing her notebook with quiet determination. The simple statement contained volumes: freedom, possibility, self-discovery. Perhaps that was the greatest legacy I could leave. Not just a company built on integrity, but people empowered to define themselves beyond others' expectations. The afternoon light shifted, casting new patterns across the floor. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own opportunities. For now, this moment of quiet connection was enough. Everyone, have you ever tested the sincerity of someone close to you? Through this experience, I learned that trust is proven, not by words, but by actions. I felt wronged and lonely, but in the end, I found the courage and dignity within myself. It's never too late, we can always stand tall again. Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Your likes and subscriptions mean so much to me. And if someone comes to mind who might need this story, please share it with them. Stay healthy and take good care of your heart.